One drop of blood, hundreds of tests, no needle. That was the promise that turned a college dropout into a $4.5 billion paper fortune and a company into a $9 billion giant. Here's the part nobody wanted to say out loud. The machine at the center of it all never actually worked, and the people paid to check were told to stop checking. By 2016, that $9 billion was zero. The founder's $4.5 billion personal fortune gone in a single Forbes revision. And here is the loaded gun on the mantelpiece. Years before any of it collapsed, the lab tested its own device and watched it fail. They knew. So who decided to keep selling it to real patients anyway? Hold that question. In 2003, a 19-year-old named Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford's chemical engineering program. Her pitch was simple and seductive. She was afraid of needles, and she wanted to make the blood test painless. A single finger prick, a tiny drop, run through a proprietary device she would name the Edison. From that one drop, she claimed, you could run a full menu of tests. It was a beautiful idea. It was also physically a very hard one. The company she founded was Theranos. Therapy plus diagnosis. Holmes wore the black turtleneck, lowered her voice, and channeled Steve Jobs so completely that investors felt they were watching the next Apple. Silicon Valley had a phrase for this: fake it till you make it. Build the hype, raise the money, and let the engineering catch up. The problem is that this was not software. This was human blood, and the engineering was supposed to catch up before the results went to sick people. And the money came. Over its life, Theranos raised roughly $945 million from private investors. Notice what is missing from that number? No major venture firm with a real life sciences team led the rounds. The money came from family offices, retail heirs, and the famous people dazzled by the story who never put the device through independent technical validation. They trusted the pitch. Almost nobody insisted on seeing the machine actually work. Then came the board, and the board was the magic trick. Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, future Defense Secretary James Mattis, William Perry, Sam Nunn, and Admiral, two former Secretaries of State, the most decorated boardroom in America. The one partial exception was Bill Frist, a former Senate Majority Leader and a heart surgeon, an actual physician. But with that single exception, none of them knew anything about blood diagnostics. Prestige was standing in for expertise. And one doctor among generals and diplomats is not oversight. It is decoration. So think about what that board actually did. The resumes were a wall so impressive that nobody climbed over it to check the science. The very people whose names gave Theranos its credibility were, almost to a person, the people least equipped to verify whether any of it was real. The credibility was borrowed, and the verification never happened. That gap is the whole story. With the board and the money in place, Theranos went for the dream. Every American neighborhood. In 2012, the grocery giant Safeway committed around $350 million to retrofit roughly 800 stores with Theranos blood testing clinics. Picture it. You grab milk, eggs, and a full blood panel on the way out. Safeway built the clinics and waited and waited. The technology never showed up working, and the deal quietly died before it ever truly went live. The Walgreens deal did go live, and that is where it stopped being a story about money and became a story about patients. Starting in 2013, Theranos wellness centers opened inside Walgreens stores, eventually more than 40 of them across Arizona. Real people walked in, gave a finger prick, and walked out with results they would take to their doctors. They believed they were getting a miracle. What they were actually getting was about to become a scandal. And in 2013 and 2014, it all peaked. Theranos was valued at around $9 billion. Elizabeth Holmes, on paper, was worth $4.5 billion, the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world, On every magazine cover, the face of the future of medicine. She had the board, the retail partners, the valuation, the myth. There was only one thing she did not have, and it was the only thing that mattered. A device that did what she said it did. So how do you sell a test from a machine that does not work? You cheat quietly. The Edison could only run a small handful of test types, and even those came back unreliable. So Theranos hid it. For the vast majority of patient tests, the lab secretly used standard commercial analyzers built by Siemens, the same machines any normal lab uses. The proprietary miracle device was largely set aside in favor of the very technology it was supposed to replace. There was a catch they could not engineer around. Commercial Siemens machines are built for a full venous draw, a vial of blood from your arm. Theranos had a tiny finger prick drop. To force that small sample through, the lab diluted it with fluid. Dilution changes the concentration of everything you are measuring. The results came back wrong, sometimes wildly, impossibly wrong, like potassium levels that, if real, would mean the patient was already dead. Those numbers went to doctors anyway. Upstairs, the marketing matched the lie. Holmes and her deputy, Ramesh Balwani, staged demos that looked like the device was running when it wasn't. They handed investors validation reports stamped with the logos of major pharmaceutical companies, endorsements those companies had never given and never authorized, and they projected revenues that were pure fiction. 2 layers of fraud stacked: the technology lie about what the machine could do, and the business lie about what the company was worth. Now, back to that gun on the mantelpiece. The people paid to catch it. Inside the lab, 2 young employees saw the failing data up close. Erika Cheung watched the device flunk its own quality control checks. And Tyler Shultz, the grandson of board member George Shultz, documented failed proficiency tests with his own eyes. They did the right thing. They raised the alarm internally, exactly as you were supposed to, and the company's answer was not to fix the machine. The company's answer was to crush them. Theranos unleashed its lawyers. Led by the legendary David Boies, the whistleblowers were threatened with trade secret lawsuits, followed, and pressured into silence. Tyler Shultz went up against his own grandfather, who sided with Holmes. Think about what that required. A 20-something choosing the truth over his family and a small army of attorneys. The system designed to catch fraud, the board, the lawyers, the investors, was being used to protect it. So it didn't fall to the people whose job it was. It fell to a reporter. The whistleblowers took the data to John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal, and on October 15th, 2015, his expose ran, Theranos was secretly using third-party machines and running almost nothing on its own device. Theranos tried to discredit him and bury the story. This time, the lawyers were not enough. Once the truth was printed, the regulators finally had to move. Federal inspectors from CMS went into the lab. In a letter released January 27, 2016, they concluded the lab posed, their words, immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. And here is the number that makes it real. Theranos eventually told regulators it had voided or corrected tens of thousands of blood test results. Tens of thousands of real people, given numbers about their own bodies that were simply wrong. Walgreens shut the partnership down. Forbes revalued Holmes at 0. Then the law arrived. In March 2018, the SEC charged Holmes, Balwani, and Theranos with massive fraud tied to raising more than $700 million. Holmes settled that civil case, a penalty, a ban from running public companies, no admission. But the Department of Justice was not settling. In June 2018 came the criminal indictment, wire fraud, and that September, the company that was once worth $9 billion announced it would shut down and dissolve. The trial took years. On January 3rd, 2022, the jury convicted Elizabeth Holmes on 4 counts. 1 conspiracy, 3 of wire fraud against investors. Note the verdict carefully. She was found guilty of defrauding the people who gave her money, but the jury did not convict her on the patient counts. In November 2022, she was sentenced to 135 months, 11 years, and 3 months. On May 30th, 2023, she reported to a federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. Her partner paid more. Ramesh Balwani, the deputy who ran the lab, was tried separately, and in July 2022, a jury convicted him on all 12 counts. Not just defrauding investors, but defrauding patients too. In December, he was sentenced to 155 months, nearly 13 years. Together, they were ordered to pay roughly $452 million in restitution to people who will likely never see most of it back. Tens of thousands avoided results. $452 million in restitution. A $9 billion company dissolved to nothing. Step back from those numbers and you see the shape of it, and you have seen this shape before on this channel. Theranos faked the technology, a device that never worked, propped up by borrowed machines and diluted blood, but the playbook of dressing up a lie in prestige until the money can't see straight is a pattern. Theranos faked what its machine could do. Enron faked the profits, an energy giant that booked imaginary earnings until the smartest guys in the room ran out of room, and Wirecard faked the cash itself. Nearly 2 billion euros that, when auditors finally looked, simply did not exist. 3 frauds, 1 constant. Every single time, the people paid to catch it were warned and they looked away. We have the films on both. Watch where the diligence failed. Here's the lesson Theranos left behind. A celebrity board with no scientific oversight. Investors who skipped the one test that mattered, testing the test, and whistleblowers who were silenced instead of heard. Prestige is not proof. The next time something looks too clean to question, remember the 1 drop of blood. If you want the stories behind the numbers, the diligence that failed, and the people who looked away, subscribe. There's always another one.